One of the core features of a platform or marketplace built with Stripe Connect is the vendor onboarding journey. Today, we're excited to demo how to build your own custom account onboarding flow and our brand new Stripe hosted Connect onboarding. Welcome back again to another episode of Developer Office Hours. I'm CJ, a developer support engineer, and I'm joined today by Hamish from the Connect Platform Experience team here at Stripe. As a reminder, knowledgeable Stripes are standing by to answer your questions live in chat, so ask away. Hamish is going to teach us today about Connect and its different forms, and then we'll cover what types of information must be collected during the onboarding flow and why. We'll dive into some code, starting with the Stripe-hosted Connect onboarding for custom accounts, followed by a custom build for onboarding a custom Connect company in the United States. And then we'll wrap with Q&A. If you have any questions beforehand, please drop those in the chat and our team will respond straight away. Hey, Hamish, can you tell us more about this Stripe Connect and what we're going to be building today?
Absolutely. Awesome. Cool. So I'm Hamish. I'm a product manager on Connect. And to get started, I think a really good place to kick off is just asking, at a very high level, what is Connect? So simply put, it's a set of APIs that allow you to use one Stripe account, which would be your platform, to control many individual Stripe accounts and to control the flow of funds between these accounts, which gives a lot of power to platforms using Connect and makes payment platform-based businesses like Lyft and Shopify possible. So specifically, when you leverage Connect's APIs, you have programmatic control over three core types of money movement. So a Stripe account can receive funds from customers that are paying for a service, cardholders, typically. Stripe accounts can also receive funds from other Stripe accounts. So that may be sending money from your platform Stripe account to their Stripe account. And then Stripe accounts can also send money from their Stripe balance to some sort of real world banking institution, like a ACH payout or some money sent to a debit card. And so in the case of Shopify and Lyft, you can see how these sort of three core primitive flows of money allow them to power their businesses. In the case of Shopify, a Shopify store is able to receive money directly from cardholders that want to purchase inventory from their site. And then that money can be paid out from their Stripe account to their real world bank account. And in the case of Lyft, you can see how Lyft is able to use money being paid from the cardholder to their Lyft Stripe platform account. They can then send a secondary transfer to the driver's Stripe account. And then that money can be sent from the driver's Stripe account out to the real world bank account that the driver has. And so in both cases, Stripe Connect allows a single Stripe account, which is the platform account, to control the flow of funds centrally throughout a larger platform. Now, of these Stripe accounts that you control, not all account owners look the same. They could be individuals, they could be businesses. And so we've created three different flavors of Connect. We call them Standard, Express, and Custom, so that you can pick the one that works best for your business. So the first one is Standard Connect. And so in this case, the Stripe account holder that you're working with has full access to their Stripe dashboard. And if they have the technical know-how, they can sort of independently use that Stripe account to facilitate their own payments outside of your Connect platform. And so when the user first creates their Stripe account, Stripe ensures that we collect all relevant information about them so that we can get them running, up and running as quickly as possible. So we own that hosted onboarding form that they interact with. Express Connect is the second form of Connect. And in this case, the account holder has access to a lightweight Stripe dashboard that can be used to view recent payment activity, but they're not able to use that Stripe account to initiate payments outside the context of your platform. And so as with Standard, when the user first creates the account, we'll ensure that we collect all relevant information from them, that we verify that information, and get them running as quickly as we can. And then the final model, which we'll spend a bit of time chatting about today, because it's the most complex, is Custom Connect. And in this model, the account holder doesn't directly interact with Stripe. So they don't log into their own Stripe dashboard ever. Instead, the Connect platform, which would be your platform, your Stripe account, is responsible for managing all of the information being exchanged between the Stripe account holder and Stripe. So to give a concrete example, when the account is first created, the platform first has to ask the account holder for all relevant information that is required to onboard a Stripe account. And so that might be their business address, their tax ID, their phone number, detail about any owners or stakeholders within their business. And we'll get into specific requirements later, but there's a range of requirements that we need to collect. So as when using Custom Connect, the platform is responsible for transmitting all of this information over to Stripe. And then the platform can use Connect APIs to check whether Stripe was able to successfully verify that information and activate the account. And if so, then great. But otherwise, they're going to have to go back to that account holder and collect any information that either failed to verify or that they didn't provide in the first instance. And so this can create a bit of a sort of complex back and forth where you're going between Stripe and the end user in order to actually ensure that they have provided all the information necessary to activate the account. I mean, the advantage of this, though, is that you then have this sort of fully white labeled experience where from the customer's perspective, they're not interacting directly with Stripe, they're interacting directly with your brand. The exception to this is if you choose to employ our hosted Connect onboarding for custom accounts. And so what that allows these platforms using custom to do is that they can send the users on a sort of one-time journey over to Stripe, where we'll provide a single hosted page that does sort of initial onboarding information collection. And then once the account has been activated via this flow, we'll send them back to you, and they still don't have access to their dashboard just like any other custom account. But you're able to sort of effectively use Stripe to collect that information so that you don't need to do that back and forth of information exchange. So the advantage here is that it's much simpler. You don't need to worry about all of the error handling associated with information collection. And it's also has many of the advantages of other types of using custom, which is that they don't really perceive a direct interaction with Stripe beyond that initial onboarding experience. So I wanted to chat a little bit about the information required to activate a Stripe account. So first of all, the information that is necessary to open a Stripe account is governed by a number of factors. So one of the big ones is financial regulation. So there are two big concepts here. There's know your customer and anti-money laundering laws, KYC and AML respectively. And these are just global regulations that all financial institutions need to adhere to, including Stripe. But the information that we collect on onboarding is also controlled by things like local laws. So certain countries may require certain information to be collected, our own risk policy, and it's also dictated largely by the payment networks that you have access to when using Stripe. So if you're interacting with Visa, MasterCard, or other networks like Alipay and Ideal, they may all have their own specific onboarding requirements, which we need to sort of pass on to the end customers. And so Stripe aggregates all of these inputs to come up with the final list of information requirements that you see. And then because you have this sort of wide range of inputs, it's also worth noting that it can actually vary quite significantly from Stripe account to Stripe account. And the things that can cause the information collection requirements to onboarding to differ are capabilities required. So do you need the Stripe account to accept card payments directly? Do you need them to receive ACH payments, Ideal, other mechanisms? It can vary depending on the business type. So obviously the information that we need about an individual is different to the information that we need about a business, a company, or a nonprofit. And of course, it varies by country. So in the US, we may require an SSN for an individual onboarding, but there is no SSN in other regions. And so we need something analogous to that, or there may be other regulations that require more or less information. And the last thing I wanted to mention here is that these requirements can and do change over time. The last point here is kind of crucial. If you build your onboarding experience manually on top of custom, the requirements may change, which will require you to make changes to your onboarding flow in order to continue onboarding accounts. And this isn't a hypothetical. This is actually something that we've done before and almost certainly will have to do again. There's often regulation change that occurs that means that we simply just have to change the requirements. And that can often happen on pretty short timescale, depending on the particular reason for the changes. So in spite of all that complexity, though, I do want to say that our docs fully describe the specific onboarding requirements for every type of account in any country that Connect supports. And so while we do provide that sort of specific set of information that we require, it's always going to be easier to use any of our hosted experiences, either standard or express, or using custom with our hosted onboarding experiences, simply for the fact that you don't need to worry about the information collection requirements. And so though we'll show you here how to do it both ways, I just sort of wanted to stress that point, that it is generally easy to let us handle it, but if you're really committed to doing it yourself and you really want that end-to-end experience, where the user is on your platform the entire time, we do absolutely power that, and many of our largest users do it. So I think with all of that being said, I think it's time to jump into some code and start onboarding some accounts.
Awesome. Thanks, Hamish. Really appreciate that breakdown. As you can see, the Connect onboarding experience is potentially very complex, and it differs depending on tons of different inputs and the various types of things that we need to collect change based on the way that you want to use your account. And so today what we're going to do is go through a process of building out a custom Connect onboarding flow to show you how you might handle one of the simplest cases of custom Connect onboarding. And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to break this episode into two parts. So the first part is we'll go through that the experience of building the hosted Connect onboarding flow for custom accounts, where we rely on Stripe's onboarding page to do the verification and information collection. And then the second part, we'll move over and build our own custom Connect onboarding flow. And so we're going to start from scratch, like always. And today we're going to use Node.js with the Stripe Node library and the Express web framework. And so, yeah, we'll just go ahead and get started here. I'm going to make Connect. Let's see. Oh, also, if you want to follow along, if you head over to github.com/Stripe samples, that's the Stripe sample GitHub organization, and there's a developer office hours repo in there. If you check out the Connect onboarding branch, you can follow along as we build. So if you want to pull out some code and watch as we go, you can do that. So here we're going to create just a client and a server. Today, again, we're going to use Node. And in our client directory, we're just going to use index and person files. And in server, we'll just have a server.js file. So yeah, again, we're going to use Stripe, Express, body parser to do some stuff with JSON, and then we're going to use .env, the .env package, to manage our environment variables. Give us a little bit of space here. All right. I'm going to copy my environment variables here, and in the Stripe samples repo, you might also see a .env.example or .sample, and that will show you all the different environment variables that you can set with your own keys, so that you can sort of follow along here. Let's see. Okay. All right. So in server.js, again, I wanted to just make a comment. So part one, we're going to do hosted Connect custom onboarding. And then part two, we'll build our own like custom onboarding flow. Okay. So we need an Express app. All right, that kind of built out a bunch, so we can talk through it here. So we're just requiring the Express library, requiring body parser, which helps us. It's like a little bit of a middleware that helps with JSON parsing. We're pulling in, or we're creating a new instance of an Express app, and then we're going to use Resolve to look up some files here. We are going to host some static files from client, and then, yeah, again, use that body parser middleware. We also need .env to pull in those environment variables, and we're going to need reference to the Stripe SDK. So I'm going to pull in the library and set my secret key when initializing Stripe there. So now we have reference to that. So in part one, again, we're going to build the Connect custom onboarding flow for the hosted solution. So this solution is going to involve sending the user to a link that lives on a stripe.com. So I'm just going to create account hosted, and we're going to return an account link. The way that this works is we create a Stripe connected account. So we're going to create a custom account that's essentially blank. And then we're going to use that account and create an account link with that. And the account link is really just essentially a URL that we can send users to. So it's going to look something like this. So first thing we're going to do is create account. And the next thing we're going to do is create the account link. So here we're going to say var account is await stripe.accounts.create. And the type of account we're creating is custom. And in this case, we want to request the capabilities for card payments and transfers. Okay. Again, today's demos are all going to be for onboarding companies in the United States. It's a very small case for all the different ways you can onboard connected accounts, but I think that you'll see the complexities that are involved and some ways that you can achieve either your fully white labeled custom onboarding or really leaning on Stripe to help collect the information and verify the account. So the next thing we're going to do is create an account link. And this requires the account that we want to use to onboard. So we're going to pass the ID of the account. It also requires a success and failure URL. And these are just the URLs that we're going to be sending the user after they complete their onboarding flow on the Stripe website. And there's a couple other arguments that we can pass here. So we can pass what we want to collect. And this allows us to control what type of information we want to collect, depending on how we want to onboard the customer. Do we want to incrementally onboard the customer, or do we want to onboard the customer and collect everything that we may eventually need for their account to be completely operational, given the requested capabilities and the type of account that we're creating? So here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pass in eventually due. And this is going to say collect everything that may eventually be due. The other thing that we can pass in here is the type of account link. So you can use these account links and the Stripe hosted Connect onboarding flow for custom accounts for either this upfront account verification or for verifying additional requirements. So as Hamish mentioned, over time, regulatory requirements change. And so there may be things that are required to verify an account that come up later. And so if your onboarding flow that you have built, your custom onboarding flow, isn't yet ready to handle certain different types of requirements, you can always use this account link to collect additional things that are required later down the road. And so that can be very helpful. And so the types here, we can just go pull up the API reference for the types of account link account links that we can create are either custom account verification or custom account update. So in this case, we're going to do full custom account verification. So we'll drop that in there. And all right, that looks pretty good. So we're just we have a post request here where right now we could pass in some data, and we might want to use that data to populate, to like pre-populate some of the account. And maybe we have already onboarded the user, and so we have their email address, and we may know a little bit of information about them. We may know what the merchant category code, for example, is for the account, because we know what type of business they're going to be doing. So we can pre-populate a lot of that account, but I want to just start with mostly a blank account. And then we're going to create an account link and return that here at the bottom. So if I spin up the server here and then send a post request to create account hosted. So curl x post. Create account hosted. I should get back an account link if everything is all good, and we do. So the JSON that we're receiving back has this URL. This URL goes to connect.stripe.com and is the URL that we would send the user to. So if you were to build a UI, you could collect some bits of information, and then you would have the user direct to this page. And so I'll show you quickly what that experience looks like. And so this is the identity verification. We're using sort of the same style as you may have seen with our Rocket Rides UI. But so we're going to verify the business. We'll say, go ahead and get started. And then Stripe is collecting all this different information. So is it an individual or is it a company? So we'll say, yes, it's an individual. And then all the different type of information that needs to be collected for an individual, their birthday, their social, anything that would be required to verify an individual, Stripe is collecting here and doing all the different regular expressions depending on the country and what information is required. So I want to quickly show you that we can pre-populate some of this by passing in more information here. So we can say business type is individual. And that will allow us to bypass and sort of skip over that first question because we have pre-populated that. And that is really handy when you are, when you're pushing someone to a Stripe hosted page. You don't want them to have to like refill out everything that you've already, that you may have already collected, the data that you've already collected. And so here we are going to just send another post request, create another account link, and show you that we are able to just bypass that first question around what type of business is it. Yeah, so now when we click next on that first page, it jumps directly to the personal details. So we know that it's already an individual because we've pre-populated that. You can also pre-populate the name and email and other things that you may have already collected. And so this is what the Stripe hosted onboarding for custom accounts looks like. And again, you can change the styling of this. You can set some colors and logos and brand it a little bit, but for the most part, it's going to look just like this. And the nice thing about this is that Stripe is handling all the different requirements for collecting information and collecting documentation and uploading files and all the regular expressions required per country. So this Stripe hosted onboarding for custom accounts is extremely powerful and extremely helpful when you are getting, when you are trying to verify or onboard custom accounts. All right, so we'll close these out and move on to part 2. Okay, so this is part 1. This is the hosted custom connect onboarding. And again, you may have a UI where you send a post request to create the hosted account, and maybe you pass in a little bit of data to pre-fill some of these things. All right, let's move on to part 2, the custom onboarding flow. Okay, so before we get too far, what I wanted to show you was the Stripe country, or I'm sorry, the country specs API. So the country specs API is a programmatic way that you can determine what types of requirements you may run into at the account level, depending on country. And so here there is a verification fields that will come back, and it has all the different data that's required for a company or for an individual account that you're onboarding. And so I'm going to show you the Stripe CLI, and someone will post a link to the Stripe CLI in the chat, and we'll also have that ready for you in the description later. But the Stripe CLI is a really powerful command line tool, and I'm just going to show you one thing that we can do here. So I'm going to say Stripe country specs retrieve US. So that's going to retrieve all the country specs for the US. And then I'm just going to filter that down with JQ to the verification fields for company. And that will show us all the information that's required for a company. So this is the current requirements for onboarding a company in the US, given our platform setup, which currently only is accepting card payments and Stripe payments. So there's a bunch of other really interesting information here too that I wanted to point out. Like you can see all the different currencies that you might be able to accept payments in for this given country. So there's a lot of really interesting data here that you may want to use. So that is the country spec API. And here's the data that we're going to want to collect while onboarding a company. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to use that as reference here. No. Okay. What's up? Okay, so this is all the different data that we need to collect. All right, we're going to use post route here to create account, and we're going to return the account after it's created. Await stripe.accounts.create. Okay, so we know the type of account is going to be custom. We know that the requested capabilities, again, is going to be card payments and transfers. We know that the business type in this case is going to be company. You could also do individual. The way that you onboard an individual in the company is a little different. An individual, if you're onboarding an individual, you can pass most of the data to verify the individual when creating the account, or you can pass it later with a separate persons API that we're going to show in a bit. So the persons API is required when you're onboarding a company to specify the people who are involved in the company, the directors and beneficial owners, and anyone that really has like a control over the company. So we are using the company business type here to showcase how you can onboard the different person types. All right, so we are doing business type, and then we need to pass the company and some information about the company. So the business address, which is going to have line 1, the city, state, postal code. And this is all information that we'll pass in when we make the API request from the front end. I skipped over business profile. So now that we've got address, I'm just going to kind of kill those. So we need to pass in the business profile. And that is accepting an MCC, that's the merchant category code, and a URL. We'll pass the URL from the front end so the user can specify kind of like what the URL of their business is. And the MCC, there's a list of available MCC codes here. Let's see, these are the merchant category codes. And so in your UI, depending on what type of platform you are and the types of accounts that you're onboarding, you may support different types of merchants. So their business type may be AC refrigeration repair, or they may be automotive tire stores. And you specify what the like business type is based on this MCC. Oftentimes, you are a platform that is specifically to a merchant category. So you can, depending on the platform that you're building, you may or may not be able to hard code the MCC. In our case, for simplicity, we're just going to hard code that as the very first MCC that we found. We also need to pass the company name. We need to pass the company phone and the tax ID. Okay, great. So we've got our business profile, we've got our business type, name, phone, tax ID, the external account. So the external account is the reference to the bank account or the debit card that's backing the Stripe account that you're creating. So in our case, when we're building our custom onboarding flow, we are going to accept bank account details, and we'll tokenize those with Stripe.js so that we get a reference to what those bank account details look like, and we're going to pass those here. So we're from the front end, we're going to have access to a bank account token that looks like btoke underscore and then some random string. So we will set that here. That's what external account is. And then quickly, I will add some terms of service acceptance stuff here at the bottom. For terms of service acceptance, you're going to pass a date, which is a Unix timestamp, and the IP address. So a handy little way to grab the Unix timestamp is to use this now function. TOS acceptance is going to receive the date, which is now, and the IP address, which in Node, you can access that directly on the request with request.ip. So now we have populated almost everything that we need to onboard the account at the account level. And there are two remaining pieces of data that we need to pass: the account opener and the owner. And these are going to be, these requirements are going to be fulfilled by using the person API to create people that are related to this account. So we're gonna, in a separate step, in a separate request, we're gonna collect information about the people that are related to the account. So for now, we're just gonna delete those and start off with creating our custom account. Now we've got like a ton of data that we need to collect. If you're looking at this and you're seeing URLs and bank accounts and IP addresses and your tax IDs and addresses, you're starting to grasp at a basic level all the different things that we need to have, like regular expressions and data validation and form validation for. But again, if you really want that, that white labeled experience for your customers who are onboarding, this is the way to go. So let's jump over to the client and build out some HTML. So for our form, or first, let's talk about like maybe how this is going to work. So we're going to have a form that when submitted, we will first collect or like tokenize bank details. Then we're going to create the account. Okay, so we need a form. I'm going to use a checkout view here just to give us a nice kind of UI. And in the center of this page, we're going to have a form with the ID account form. And it'll have a big button that just says submit. And now we need to add a ton of form fields here to collect all the different information about an account. So let's collect the name of the company. And we're going to just pre-populate all of these fields so we don't have to go through and like fill them out every time we're testing the form. But obviously in practice, before you would go live, you would go through and remove all of these pre-filled values. And so this one, we're going to start off with maybe like demo Inc. We know that we need to collect, let's pull up our server for reference here. So we know we need to collect the external account, the company name, phone, tax ID, a bunch of different things. So we're going to let's just start with the name and the bank account details. So we'll collect the account number and the routing number and the name of the company. And this will kind of be our starting place. And we will first try to tokenize the bank account details and pass the name and see what types of requirements are left over after we send those. So in order to tokenize the bank account details, we're going to need Stripe.js. So we'll load that. And our like initialize the instance of Stripe with our publishable key. And we will, let's also add a div here for debugging. as we have in other demos. Message. Okay, so when submitted, so we'll grab reference to the form, account form, and when it's submitted, we want to create bank account, then create account. Okay, so there's two functions here that we need to define: create bank account, and create account. And the I'm passing create account as an argument to then. So when the create bank account promise resolves, it will forward the bank account token that was created to the create account function. And I'll show you what that looks like here. So create bank account is going to return a promise from create token. And the type of token that we're creating is bank account. And we're going to pass all the different bank account details and then handle the response here. So the bank account details are that are required for tokenizing is the country. I'm going to pass US for the country. The currency is USD. The account number is going to be pulled out of the form. Account number, and same thing with the routing number. And let's see, so the account number is account.value, and the routing number is going to be routing.value. We also need to pass the account holder type, and this is going to be company in our case, and the account holder name. And we are collecting that from the form already, so we'll grab the name out of the form. Okay, so name.value. All right. So now we're hopefully this is going to use Stripe.js to create a bank account token for the United States with that account number, routing number for a company that has the name Demo Inc. And we have pre-populated this account and routing number with the test account number and routing numbers. There are a couple different account and routing numbers, and for all of this Connect onboarding, there's like a huge number of different ways that you can test different scenarios. And so in the chat here, if someone could just post a link to the Connect testing page, that would be helpful. So you can see and follow along with all the different test numbers that you can use to trigger different things. So the test account number here should tokenize, and the response that we'll get will have a token attribute, and we want to return the ID of that token attribute. And this is going to look something like btoke xxx, which should be forwarded here, btoke xxx, and that's what we're going to use as our external account when creating our account. Okay. So the next step is that we want to actually go through and make the request to our backend to create the account. So the way we're going to do that is with a form data, with some form data. So we're going to say fd is new form data that is composed of our new account form. Okay, fd.set, and we want to set the external account to be bank token. And then we're going to use this form data as our post body. So the way that we're going to do this is with the fetch command. And we're going to say create account, which lines up with the API endpoint that we created on our backend. The data that we're sending is the entries for the form data. Okay, so let's add some debugging here. So when we create the bank account details, we'll say creating bank account. And then when we create the account, we will say created bank account. And we'll just log out the bank token that we got back. Okay, fantastic. All right. bug creating account. And we'll log out what we got back from creating the account. And this will just show like the full JSON of the account that got back so we can inspect it and look at it. Okay, I'm happy to see tons of folks are engaging in chat. It looks like people are getting some answers to their questions. And as always, we really appreciate you coming and engaging with us. And we really want to help build your integrations. And we want to help you along the way. And we're always available in IRC if you go to the Freenode channel in Stripe. Also, we are hosting lots of these different office hours demos. If you want to learn more about all the different things that are available to devs, one really helpful way to do that is to subscribe to the Dev Digest, which is available on all the Stripe documentation pages. So, all right, so now that we are working on creating an account, hopefully you've had some time to review this code. And what I'm going to do now is just pull up the page here for localhost. Let's actually restart the server and make sure we've got the newest, latest, and greatest stuff. This is what it looks like, okay? We have our the name of the company that we're collecting, the account and routing number, and then I just want to pull this over here a little bit. And sorry, that looks a little small. Let's try to make this bigger here. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. Make it a little bigger. All right, so we've got our page here that's loading. I'm going to drop in some breakpoints just so we can make sure things are happening as expected in the order expected, etc. All right, so let's click submit. When we submit, we're going to create the bank account, then create the account. So we'll click submit. First thing is to create a bank account. So we should drop in here. Okay, we're grabbing the account number and routing number from the input fields that we have on the form. And those look like they are referencing the right things as expected. All right, so now we're going to go through and create a token for the bank account. Cross your fingers. Let's see if I've remembered all of the arguments to creating a bank account. It looks like we did. So the response came back here, and we do have a token. The ID, as promised, starts out with btoke and then is followed by an underscore and some random string. So this is the bank account token that we're going to use. It's a one-time token that we're going to use to set the external account for this new Stripe account. It's going to be like the backing account when people want to transfer money into their own bank account from their Stripe account. And that's something that you would do as the platform. Because it's a connected, because it's a custom connect account, they won't have any dashboard. So you will have full control over when those payouts are made, and you can configure all of that directly on the account. All right, so now that we have created the bank account, we should jump into creating the account, and we are sort of logging this out. I forgot to put a space there, but that's okay. All right, so now we have our form data, which we are populating with this external account. That looks good. Now we're going to create the account, and we're sending a post request to create account with the data from our form data with this external account set. And this takes a moment because we are creating all kinds of stuff and doing some validation and verification on the back end. And so that does take a little bit. You may want to add like a little loading or make sure that people aren't double clicking on your submit button and things like that. But we do get back the account, and we're going to log that out. I'm going to remove all these breakpoints, and we got the account back. So this is the raw data that we received back from the API about the account, and it has tons of different things on it. But the one that we're going to want to look at first is requirements. So this requirements hash is what you should use when building the UI and when collecting information. This tells you what is due, what information do you need to collect and send to Stripe in order to verify this account. So we have the profile, URL, the address, city, state, zip, phone, and then the relationship. So we knew that we already needed to collect a lot of this, and we know we need to collect the relationship for the account owner and account holder. All right, so I'm gonna kind of quickly blow through this stuff. So we're going to collect the URL, and that's going to be rocketrides.io, which is another Stripe demo that you can check out. Tax ID, tax ID. Okay, we're going to fill this with 9 zeros, that's the valid tax ID. We also need the phone. We also need the address. Magic, address populated. Okay, we also need, I think that might be it. Let's just refresh. Now we have a form that has all these magical fields. We're kind of speeding through this. I know that we are coming up pretty quickly on time here, so I kind of just want to show you a couple more pieces of this before we end today. Again, really happy to hear your questions in the YouTube chat here. And if you have any other questions later on, feel free to reach out on IRC. We're always on and always happy to answer questions. All right, so the last piece here that we need to collect is the information about the person. All right, so the way that we're going to do this is we're going to create another endpoint on the server to create a person. Create person. We're going to return the person object. We are going to say person is stripe.accounts.create person. And so this create person API call is actually nested in the accounts API. So you'll need to pass in the account of the person that you're creating, and then all the data about the person. Here we're going to pass in at least things like first name and last name. We'll need an address. I'll just copy from here. Magical power of editing. Okay, we're also going to need things like an ID number. This is going to be their social security number in the case of a US individual. We'll need their email address and phone. And we may need like other pieces of information, like a document, which will point you to how to do that here in a bit. All right, so I think this should work for creating a person. The person, there is not a similar country specs API to see what's required for a person. So really the best way to figure out what's required for a person is just to try to create them, and they will similarly have a requirements hash that tells you all the data that you'll need to create for a person. One that I just remembered is we'll need the date of birth, and one of the test date of births is 1901. 190111. If you don't pass 190111, then your person will not be a verified person. That's like one of the things that you can control to trip up verification and trigger requirement of other things. So we're going to pass in 190111. We're really just going to hard code this. We don't have to build like a date collection UI, but you would need to build this yourself. Okay, so we've got the server. Let's build the client really quickly here. So this one's going to look a little different. We're going to say we're going to have a form that has the ID of person form. And again, we are going to collect like the names of the person, and this needs to be in a field set. Okay, we're going to need their phone and their social and their address. And again, I kind of really used a lot of snippets for this demo because there's just so much to collect. But again, you can totally lean on that Stripe hosted Custom Connect onboarding flow if you don't want to go through all the hassle of figuring out the regular expressions for each country that you're trying to launch in. So this can be really helpful for that. Grab reference to the person form. Person form. And when we submit the person form, we want to create the person. Okay, I'm not going to show how to update a person, but you would also probably want some way to try to create the person and then see what requirements are left over, do all the data validation, then update that person. So here we're really just going to create the person and then call that good. Bug message. We do want a debug message here also, so that we can see what's happening. Okay, so the create person function looks like this. Function create person. Again, we're going to use form data. I'll person form. And this one, we need to set the account, because that'll be, the account ID is going to be given to us in the previous form. So we're actually going to pass the account ID in as a query string param. So this is going to look like params.get account. Okay. And then we're going to do return fetch p. So we're going to send a post request to create person and pass in again that form data and log out the person data that we get back from our server and show like a little debug message that we're creating the person. Okay, all right. Let's see here. So how's this working? We've got our form. We are collecting the address, the social, last name, first name. Again, we're hard coding the date of birth on the back end. Trying to think if there's any other things we need to collect. I think that should be good, good to start. So again, the way this will work is we'll just copy the ID of the account. In reality, you would probably store this in your database. Account equals, and then we'll post the account ID. We are missing a button. It's easy enough. Person button, create person. Okay, all right. So if we say create person, this is going to create a person that's related to this specific account. I think we may need to restart the server. All right, create person. So we're creating the person. Again, we are running up on time here, so I'm trying to go a little quickly. And the person, the resulting person is pending here. So I wanted to show you with stripe-cli really quickly how we can look at, how we can fetch both an account and a person. Stripe, so we can use stripe. Accounts retrieve, stripe account, and then pass in the account ID. And this is one that you need to pass in your API key to. And we get back the account that we just created. And there are still some requirements that are here. Even though we've created a person that's related to this account, we still see that it's missing an account owner and an account opener. And those are past due. And so our payouts are disabled and our charges are still disabled for this account. And if we pull the person, the specific person object, which we can do like this, persons retrieve, we have to pass the account ID and the person ID here. We can do that like this. Then we see that the person is actually verified, but the account, remember, is not verified and charges are disabled because it's missing this account owner and account opener. That's because when we created the person, we didn't actually set any of the relationship details. So we didn't say that it was a representative account opener, owner, how much the person, if they were an owner, how much they owned. So let's do that now really quickly and say ownership percentage, percent ownership. And I always forget if it's ownership percentage or percent ownership. Let's see here. So percent ownership is the field that we want. Okay. And we'll say the value for now is just 100. They own 100%. And we want to create checkboxes for if they're the owner and if they're the representative. Representative means, are they eligible and able to be the person who opens the account and be a representative for the company? Usually this is like the CEO or CFO or something. Which reminds me, we also need to collect the title, which is going to be, we'll pre-populate with CEO. Okay, so let's go back. We're going to start from scratch here, create a brand new account. Demo Inc. 2, submit. We're creating our brand new account. All right, give it a sec. We will copy that. Before we go too far, I'm remembering that we did not set the relationship stuff up on the back end. So when we're creating the person, we also need to pass the relationship information. Relationship. Did I spell that right? Probably. Data.title. No, percent ownership. Forgetting this. Okay, percent ownership, data.percent ownership, owner representative. Okay, so now we're setting that on the back end. Restart the server. Now that we have this account that was created, we can go to our person page and use that account. All right, now we've got these checkboxes for owner and representative. They own 100% of the company. They're the CEO. We're going to create this person. Now, in practice, if you have a company, you might have people who own 50%, 25%, different percentages. And when you are getting your verification hash back for a company that's not verified, if you see a relationship owner, it might be that the percent ownership doesn't add up to 100. So you want to go check all of your different people that are related to your account and make sure that that percent ownership adds up to 100. Okay, it looks like we created the person, but their email address is still due. And that's because we didn't create an email form or an email field. So we'll add that here. Refresh. And now we have Jenny Rosen. The person would complain about being the same person. So I'm going to create a new person. Account can have only one account opener. We already created an account opener, so this person can't be the account opener. I'm just going to start from scratch because we are running up on time here, and I do want to be respectful of your time, and I do want to wrap up here shortly. We try to keep these episodes to 1 hour. Again, thank you so much for coming and engaging with us in chat. We really appreciate your time, and we hope this was helpful for you. All right, so we're going to go here and go to person, paste this in here. Again, if you want to know about these episodes, future episodes, okay, we're going to create the person. Please go ahead and hit subscribe, hit that like button. And again, the Dev Digest is available on all the API pages. You can sign up for that email and be notified when these are coming out. All right, so in this case, we have created a person. They're the CEO of the company. We can go back through with Stripe CLI and fetch the different people and the account. And let's see. So here, Stripe accounts receive. Okay. Let's pull this account and see what it looks like. Okay, custom account, pending verification, the company's tax ID, and some information about the person. So now we need to pass a verification document. In the GitHub repo that we have included a link to, we will show you, there will be a separate document page where you can see how to upload documents and how to attach those to persons that have already been created. But this is the thing that we need to do now is upload a document, a file, the front and back of a verification document, and attach that to the person. So yeah, I'm just gonna stretch time here a little bit. I know if you've got to go, that's totally cool. So we are, is this too many zeros? This should be 9 zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Okay, that seems right. Got our account number and routing number. All right. Creating the account. All right, we've got our account ID here. Okay. Now we want to create a person. Is the social right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. That is right. Got 100% ownership. And the date of birth. Let me just double check here that our date of birth is the right date of birth, 1901-01. So let's look here and make sure that we are hard coding the date of birth correctly. 1901-01. All right. So that's looking good. All right, let's see if this one wants to behave. Creating person. Again, this takes a moment because there's lots of verification that's happening. Okay, so now we're still getting back requirements that are pending verification for the document. So we would need to upload. The document, and so I'm going to point you to that GitHub repo that shows how to upload a document and attach it to a person. Again, thank you so much for joining us. If you have questions, we're going to hang around and chat for just a little while longer. Let's see here. Yeah, so this was a really quick overview of how you might go about creating a Connect onboarding flow. Again, you would need to go through and create the regular expressions and data verification to collect all that information that is required to verify the account. Again, we are always available on IRC. You can also reach out to support.stripe.com. And we are standing by to answer your questions in email also. Thanks again for joining us for this week's office hours. Your engagement in live chat and your questions are always great to see. We hope you found this useful and that you know that we're here for you, and we want to enable you to grow your software and your business. And if you enjoyed this episode and you want to see more live office hour episodes and other videos, again, hit that big red subscribe button. We also have a brand new, digest that I've mentioned a couple of times. It highlights new features and will allow you to be invited to in-person workshops. And it talks about the API and SDK updates. And it's a really great resource for developers. Check out the links in the GitHub repository. We'll have more information about how to upload documents and attach them to people. Then again, thank you so much for sticking with us here through the hour. We're constantly striving to improve, and one of the ways that you can help is by providing us some feedback about this video. So in the description below, we will have a link to a feedback form, and we'd really appreciate your feedback about this episode and maybe other topics that you want to hear about how to integrate with Stripe. We have some really exciting upcoming episodes. We're going to show iOS one-time payments. We have an upcoming episode on Stripe React Elements, how to use Stripe React Elements with your React UIs, and how to use that with the single card element, but also separate out into different elements. We also have an awesome episode coming up for you about how to use Stripe Checkout, the Stripe hosted checkout page for collecting payments and setting up subscriptions. So one of the questions that I see in chat, thank you, Lauren, for reaching out, is regarding the upload of the document and checking the validity of the document. You will have to verify just the type of the document and really the size. But when you upload that, we will handle the processing of verifying the validity of the document. So you essentially you will upload the document and receive back some JSON, which will have a file ID, and then you can send an update request to the person API. And when you update the person API, you will pass another field there under verification document, and then you can pass the front and back. Typically it's like the driver's license or some sort of other form of identification for the person. So that's basically how that works. It turns out that you can upload files directly to Stripe from the client, and there is some code for that in the GitHub repository already. If you wanted to head over to the folder for this demo and check out the document.html in the client, there is some JavaScript there that will show you how to upload files directly to Stripe and then give you back a file ID. It's kind of like tokenizing, card details, but you're tokenizing the document instead. So it's pretty neat stuff. I wish I had time to show you today, but we are running low on time. So again, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you hanging out with us. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Thanks again.